They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.
What up? Welcome back once again to the Necro Zoo. I am Bones. And in this one, let's go ahead and add one more vehicle to my McFarlane DC Multiverse collection. Now, today we will take a look at Storm, a sort of vehicle steed coming out of the Aquaman 2 movie from McFarlane and the DC Multiverse. Now, I have actually been pretty excited to check this one out because I have some plans for him. Now, I did talk about in my Black Manta review that not a big fan of the Jason Momoa Aquaman, not a big fan of the Aquaman live action figures. Now, I will be purchasing them and adding them to the collection, but they're just basically not that high up on my list of figures that I must have. But this Seahorse Storm really caught my eye, really wanted to add him to the collection, but not necessarily for what you may think that I want him for. Now, one thing I do have to give props is to McFarlane is that you don't really see a lot of giant seahorse, vehicle riding steeds. I think they do make them for like the little baby toys. I don't think anybody has made one for a 6 or 7 inch scale. Well, I think DC Direct did make one, but so yeah, that that does not compare to this beautifully sculpted. Uh, Actually, doesn't have a lot of paint, but what it does have, like contrasts with the plastic that it's molded in, and actually makes it look really, I want to say sparkly and and just really makes it pop. So without further ado, he does look pretty majestic in the packaging. But let's go ahead and take a closer look at him. But first, he does come with a giant black DC Multiverse stand. Now I'm kind of looking at this, and basically I know that this is going to be to sort of pedestal him. Now, one thing I did find out is that if you adjust the way he is, you can actually stand him flat without the stand. And you can actually still put, the figure that you want to ride on him like this because the legs do not reach the floor. So you don't necessarily have to use this, but this is pretty cool for like a display if you have the room to display your Storm with a rider. So we'll hold on to this. He also comes with his data file card on the front. Of course, per usual with the movies, they do have an image, but sort of a comic book style of the character. You got Storm there on the front from the Lost Kingdom movie. And on the back, you do have a little bit of information. Pretty sweet. We'll add that to the collection. The only other thing he comes with is, of course, this sort of rod with a sort of peg. And this is probably, to mount him. So I found the easiest thing to do is actually drive this in first and just have it like this. But we'll actually put this aside first, and let's go ahead and take a more detailed look at him. Now, he does come in 2 parts in the packaging, basically the tail and the upper half. Not too hard to put together. You just snap it in. And I must say that the sculpt does line up really nicely. And once you get it in there, it does have slight movement, but you don't want to move it too much because, of course, you break up the sculpt with that. So, first impressions, really heavy for a creature riding vehicle from McFarlane. Have to say, really hefty. Even Joker Dragon didn't weigh that much, but this one does have a little bit of body to it, which I really like. Oh, just immaculate sculpt work. All the details and this sort of crustacean body that the seahorses have is really awesome. Now, as I said before, he is cast in this sort of like pearl green, but they did add some purple paint with different hues, which gives them that sort of like shellfish, vibrance that looks really awesome. Really nice to get something like this from McFarlane, something we've never seen before. I know a lot of people, pretty much think this is like for the movie, but in my collection, since I'm not really a big fan of the live action, especially the Aquaman stuff, I have my own plans for this. I actually have had my own plans for this guy since I first saw him announced. But like I said, beautiful detail, even on the fins. Now, these fins actually have some really nice articulation up and down and actually out. Not as much, but you get some movement. And like I showed before, you can manipulate him so that he can actually sit flat on your desk without having to have the stand if you would like that. So, kind of unassuming articulation that he has. But of course, this is basically how you usually see a seahorse with their tail. Sort of a caracol like this, like a C shape. Really nice. You got the intricate detail on the saddle, which looks really good. Now, they didn't paint this, they just molded it in gold plastic. But I actually prefer that because, taking off figures, you don't want to rub too much on this. Now, it would be kind of nice to see if we could get a shiny gold on this, but I would just be really leery of, the rub off with this. So for me, I think for my purposes, it's fine the way it is. You never know, I could go in and repaint it. Now, beautiful scope work on the back, going up into the head. Let's take a look at the head. Love this sort of little head harness that he has. Sort of reminds you of like battle horses, the way they sometimes used to have that head guard, to protect them in battle. You even got the cool reins here for the, Aquaman or whoever to hold on to. And then you got the head sculpt. Beautiful, like I said, beautiful. The paint is minimal, but what it does have really adds to the figure and just really makes it shine and gives it a lot of cool tone. I love the color that they did for the eyes, which is sort of a gold opaque color to the whole eye, which looks really awesome. Let's take a look at the head articulation. Now, he does have a double ball, so you could really manipulate him a lot, but he does look down well. Now, he can't really look up, but you can twist his head and get a little bit of up movement, not too much, but you do that right to left. And then, of course, you could tilt his head for some character. So there is possibilities here where you could get him in different poses, but of course he is just a seahorse, so don't be thinking you're going to get him in all kinds of crazy articulated poses. So for our purposes, he does look really good and work really well. Pretty nice. Now you do have the stand, which makes it a lot easier to pose this figure and have him on display. Now you can't just put this in. You got to be really careful to go ahead and push, but you got to push straight down because any kind of flex, I'd be scared to break this base. But you can push him down and get him in there. Really nice design, really cool movement and motion that this figure has on the stand. Can like ride him up, get a little bit of movement articulation out of him for figure photography and stuff like that. Really awesome addition to the Aquaman lore, which, brings me into what I really want to use this guy for. And that is for an Aquaman, a comic book Aquaman. Now, I do have various ones that I want to bring out. Of course, we do have my custom DC Multiverse version of a classic Aquaman. I did make this one by using the NECA Flash Gordon head and adding some paint but he is pretty awesome. And since I saw this seahorse, I knew that I was going to put my classic Aquaman on him. But I do want to bring out, you have the old DC Universe Classics version. You know, the outdated articulation, but he does have really nice sculpt. You know, I did have an extra trident like his from the DC Classics, and I ended up giving it to my Multiverse version, which gives him a completely different sort of royalty feel to this Aquaman. I did paint it a little bit of a more gold than the original classic version. And then we also have the other Mattel version, which is another sort of, you know, take on the classic Aquaman. Now, they kind of regressed here in some ways and advanced in some other ways because they didn't sculpt out the scales on his shirt. They're just printed on. And at this time, they were actually experimenting with pinless articulation, which sort of limits the articulation at the same time. But I did want to see how each one of these looks on this seahorse. That way, if you favor more of the Mattel versions, you can see if they actually fit. Now, the DC Universe Classics has more of a quad swivel, but that did allow him to sit onto this. It doesn't look too bad. It doesn't look out of scale, but it is, you know, a large seahorse with this figure. And then the later Mattel one actually was a little bit easier to get him to sit on there because he had more of just your basic thigh swivel, like a la Marvel Legends. And this one actually looks pretty good considering everything. If you were to have just this Mattel Aquaman, he would look really good on the Storm Seahorse. Not going to do any dry hate. It looks, you know, passable. But of course, my custom DC Multiverse classic Aquaman was just made to sit on this guy. So he looks really awesome on him. That's how I'm going to have him displayed for now. Now we have heard that they're going to release another classic Aquaman. We have no idea how it's going to look with the head sculpt or the color. So for now, this is going to be my figure that rides the seahorse, but in the future, I could change it. And there's other things I could change, like the yellow that I put on the belt, it could actually be gold as well. And that could change it up depending on what happens with the future classic Aquaman release from McFarlane. Now, I actually have a DC Direct figure that I've been working on. And of course, DC Direct, as beautiful as they have terrible articulation. You got basically like 5 points of articulation, and this guy could never get on the seahorse, but he looks pretty good. I did do what a lot of people have done with this classic Aquaman, which is use the Barry Allen head from Flashpoint. But since I really love this NECA Flash Gordon head, I kind of used it on this DC Direct Aquaman that I've been holding on to because the head sculpt that came with this figure was pretty horrendous. Kind of looked like drunk John Cena. So I just modded him to fit onto this body. Love the green, metallic green that they used. And I actually painted the gold because even the chainmail was like a sort of brown color on the original figure. And I gave him a different trident. Another detail I did add was I gave him sort of flowing hair, like if he's underwater. And I painted it myself and molded it, customed it to fit his head. So this one looks pretty good, but this is just like a little side project that I've been working on, nothing big. I did also want to bring out the Black Manta from this wave because for whatever reason, this guy looks really close to comic book style. And like I said, he looks awesome up against this classic Aquaman. So really love this Black Manta for now until we get an official comic book style Black Manta. He works really well. But all in all, I'm really happy to get this into the collection. Now, I have been floating around ideas if I want to buy an extra one of these. I will be buying one to keep mint in box in my mock collection. But, you know, Recently, I've been moving around a couple of things. I did switch up the shelf behind me. You used to see before there were some movies and stuff back there. So I took all of that out and just put pure DC Multiverse there. So that actually gives me a little bit more room to, adjust to all of the figures that McFarlane has been putting out. So while I won't necessarily be having a movie Aquaman for another one of these, I may buy another one to do a custom. And I mean, who doesn't want two big seahorses on display in their collection? I definitely think it'll look cool. As I always say, your limit is only as far as your imagination could take you. But you guys keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.